This is a presentation of the 2019 annual report of the Independent Redress Mechanism of the Green Climate Fund. In 2019, the IRM took a number of steps to strengthen our systems. These included the adoption of the procedures and guidelines, the drafting of supporting operating procedures, and the implementation of a case management system. The procedure and guidelines of the IRM were adopted by the board in February 2019. These are progressive procedures and have now been cited by a number of civil society organizations as good practice when measured against multiple indicators. They have also been adapted and recommended to the Chinese government for adoption by grievance redress mechanisms of Chinese companies investing abroad. The supporting operating procedures were drafted by the IRM and submitted to the Office of General Counsel for their comments and feedback. They have now been finalized and will be issued in 2020. The supporting operating procedures are an inward-facing document which helps the staff of the IRM on a day-to-day basis to implement its terms of reference and its procedures and guidelines. Finally, a case management system that was tailor-made for the IRM was put in place during 2019 and made operational. This is an electronic case management system which allows online access and will collect data on all of the IRM's cases from their inception to their closure. In 2019, the IRM was called upon to exercise all of its 5 functions. With regard to complaints and requests, we received 5 free cases, all of which were dealt with, and we initiated one self-initiated inquiry into FP001, the very first project funded by the GCF. With regard to advisories, the IRM prepared 2 advisories, one on sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment at the project level, and one at the institutional level. The institutional level advisory has since been withdrawn because the issues dealt with in that advisory have been reconciled through discussions with the Secretariat. With regard to the SEAH advisory, it has now been presented to the Ethics and Audit Committee, after which it will be presented to the board. The IRM also provided a number of inputs on various policies and reviews that were conducted by the Secretariat. With regard to capacity building, the IRM held its first training workshop for the grievance redress mechanisms of direct access entities in October of 2019. 14 participants from grievance redress mechanisms of direct access entities were invited to Songdo and trained over a 3-day period. The IRM has also developed online learning modules so that in the future, the training can be delivered through online at the pace that each participant chooses. The IRM also conducted outreach activities. A number of workshops were held to raise awareness among civil society organizations and partner organizations with regard to the IRM, its functions, and how it might be accessed with regard to complaints. We also held a number of in-reach events for GCF staff to raise the awareness about the IRM and its functions and how best to relate to the IRM in the event of it receiving and processing complaints or requests. The IRM has continued to work with partners. It has developed its roster of experts. There are 3 rosters of mediators, subject experts, and translators who can be drawn on by the IRM and appointed as consultants on a case-by-case basis, depending on the complaints and requests that we might receive. The IRM has also continued to be a member of and collaborated with the Independent Accountability Mechanism Network, or IAMnet. The IRM is serving on various working groups of IAMnet, collaborating with redress mechanisms of other international financial institutions, and attended its annual meeting in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, making several contributions and interventions in the course of that meeting. Looking ahead to 2020, the IRM plans to continue handling cases. We will conclude monitoring the FP001 Peru self-initiated inquiry. Out of the 4 undertakings given by the Secretariat, 2 of them have been completed, and the other 2 relating to the conduct of a free prior informed consent process relating to the establishment of a conservation area and the obtaining of a legal opinion on the impact of that conservation area on the legal titling of indigenous lands will be continued to be monitored throughout 2020. In addition, the IRM will continue to handle requests and complaints that we may receive this year. With regard to capacity building, the IRM is organizing a conference, a 3-day conference for grievance redress and accountability mechanisms. We will invite 30 such grievance redress mechanisms of direct access entities, 12 civil society representatives, and academics and experts in the field in order to provide training for the grievance redress mechanisms of the GCF and its accredited entities. We will also, of course, launch the online modules and make them publicly available, which would be an important contribution to this field of practice. With regard to lessons learned, the IRM will present an advisory report on preventing sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment at the project level to the board at B26 or B27. And we will look to the possibility of providing other advisories as appropriate. And finally, with regard to outreach, we have planned an outreach event for civil society in Southern Africa and later in the year, hopefully in South Asia, though some of these unfortunately might be disrupted now because of the coronavirus situation in Korea and in other parts of the world. We will also, of course, develop and revise our communication strategy, which is now 3 years old, and this will be revised and brought up to date with regard to the being implemented over the next 3 years. Finally, with regard to the budget utilization of the IRM's budget as of 31st December 2019, I'm glad to report to the board that we have spent out 81% of the budgeted funds. With regard to the individual line items, we've spent out 91% of the full-time staff. One of our staff members resigned in the course of the year, and we had to spend some time recruiting a new staff member, which is why there's a slight shortfall. We have underspent on our consultants and interns, making it 58%. However, that is offset by the contractual services we employed in developing the learning modules, for which we have slightly overspent at 104%. You might notice that under travel, we have done fairly well in general travel, utilizing about 59% of the travel for staff. But with regard to the travel associated with complaints and requests, we have not utilized any of those funds simply because we did not receive any complaints or requests that required travel. This brings me to the end of the presentation of the 2019 annual report of the Independent Redress Mechanism of the Green Climate Fund. You can find a copy of the annual report on the GCF's website under the 25th board meeting webpage, and the document itself is numbered GCF/B25/INF.08. If you read the report, you will find many more details than you found in this presentation. Thank you very much for listening.